Very simple to cut out. Okay, now we're going to transfer these designs onto a bit of corrugated cardboard. Corrugated cardboard will have stripes, which is the direction of the corrugations. Make sure the stripes on the template align with those. Put that down on the card and simply trace around it. And then mark, and all I'm going to use is my pencil, just pushing through. All the little holes that are marked on the template. Once you've cut out all the forms, you should be left with the head, body and legs, and make sure you mark clearly where the big holes will be, looking at your template, and then we're ready for the next stage. That gives us a good pad to be able to take our components, punch through, and then enlarge the hole using a ballpoint pen. Each piece has got one large hole and then a series of small holes, and I'm making sure that I can get my bradawl or my skewer all the way through the cardboard. Be careful of not spiking yourself at this stage. First thing is to measure 45 centimeters and cut one piece. This will be fixed in the head, down the neck, through the body, and become one leg. Then we need a piece 20 centimeters long, and this will be in the body down to the other leg. I'm going to start with a knot at one end, and that's going to come through a foot. It's going to come all the way up to the body. And we can now decide the length of the leg. That leg I've made about 10 centimeters long. Once that's decided, we now need to fix the cord onto the body along the line of the double little holes. Now we can decide the length of the neck. So I'm going to just measure this against the one I've made earlier. So the head would come to about there. So that would come to about that position. So I've got a little bit of excess here, and that bit, that small bit, I'm just going to chop off. And that comes up to the position of the eye, and there are then 4 little holes in pairs to attach that in the same way as I did for the body. Check that that's all nice and tight. And now for the other leg. Start with a knot. And I'm enlarging the existing hole here so that I can bring that in. And really important to get these two legs the same length. There we go. And then make a knot where that's come through the cardboard. And check that those legs are still the same length. And that is your skeleton for the bird. The next thing to do is to make a place for a head string and a body string to attach to the head and the body. And the exact position of these is impossible to know. So what I'm going to do is make a number of possible positions for that. So I'm using a bit of ordinary string, making a knot at one end. The little knot that I've made won't slip through that little piece of string. So that's what really holds this together. That's now fixed that at like a little handle almost. And I'm going to just tie it, I'm probably just going to tie it one more time through that center hole. I've just made two little handles to be able to hang the puppet from there or there. If you want to be really thorough, put extra 2 little cords in, then you'll have 1, 2, 3, 4 places to hang your puppet from. We do the same for the body. And I've now got 1, 2, 3 possible places to be able to hang the puppet from. I can model that into the shape that I've cut for the cardboard, and that I would normally just do as a flat shape, and then I can just squash the sides in nicely, and I'm just rolling it here to get a shape. Completely cover the cardboard and the plasticine with tape. And then you can refine the shape slightly by, again, rubbing onto a surface, or just with your fingers you can push down. Really important to get all the corners, all the edges and corners of the tape completely rubbed down. So the two sides of the head need to be the same weight. And I'm putting this blob of plasticine starting around where the neck is, and then just shaping it slightly. And then I'm doing the same on the other side. And then fix that on with tape. Main thing is to fix that plasticine on really well At this stage, you don't need to cover all the cardboard. So that's the head. And I'm going to do the same for the body. Once you've got the plasticine attached, you can now shape it a bit more through the masking tape and start refining the shape, equalizing the two sides. And that's already starting to work very nicely. Now we're going to make a little control to hang the puppet from. So I'm using two chopsticks. I'm just choosing them carefully. The one is a little bit thinner than the other. I'll use that for the leg bar. So I'll find the middle of that, which is at 10. And I'll just mark that. The other one becomes the head body bar. And I'm just going to mark that at 7 from one end, the thick end. And the other mark is at about 11. I'm going to take some of this thread and I'm just going to start by tying it across the middle of the leg bar, and it's wanting to go straight, and that's fine. So we've got that there. Now I'm going to turn these this way. This is where another pair of hands becomes really important, or what I've got is a little vise that can hold this for me. So I'm doing a figure of 8. So I'm going one way, crossing these over, switching the direction and going the other way. So we're ending up with nicely lashed together, and that should be reasonably firm. Trim these, not too short, probably about 1 centimetre long. And we can now rub in a bit of the wood glue. So we're looking at one end of a leg bar. And a really nice way of doing this is just to make a loop out of string and then tie it on with a bit of the cord. So I've made a little loop, half of a knot, and just folded in half bit of string. And I'm popping that on the end there, and then I'm tightening it. And this then wants to get right to the end of the little leg bar with not a lot sticking out, just enough to get the little bradawl or skewer through the little loop at the end. Once you've tied that off, you can then wrap this thread around. So make sure that loop is at the top. Tie that off tight, another knot. And then to absolutely fix this on, what I'm doing is I'm laying one of the threads down the leg bar and just wrapping the other around it and tying it back to the other bit of thread. Doesn't really matter how you do this, as long as that little loop is tight on the end. And what I would then do is just trim all of these bits away and rub some glue into the whole thing. At this mark, which is just behind the leg bar, we're going to make a loop to hang the puppet up by. So I'm taking a longer bit of white string, folded it in half, doing one knot. So once you've made the loop, place it on the mark that you made earlier and tie it really tightly onto there with the loop upward, and then you can very simply, as we did on the end of the leg bar, I'm just going to lay one of these threads out and the other one I'm going to just wrap around like this. Second knot to finish that off. Trim those not too short and really saturate that with glue. What I like to do is take another length of string and wrap that along the bit that you'll be holding. So I'm going to just make a little knot there. I'm going to tie it off firmly like that. And I'm then just going to wrap this around, and this just gives a nicer handle to use. And to finish this off, I'm doing a half hitch. So I'm taking that, passing it through there, making that tight, and then I'm doing a second one, a loop over, through there, and then that can be cut again, not too short, and then paint that with glue. Take a sheet of newspaper and making sure the two halves are the same, I'm going to scrunch paper for one side of the head and the same amount for the other side. Then I'm going to see how much I really need. Then get some tape. If you've got someone to work with you, it's a lot easier to actually get them to do the cutting or the tearing of the tape and starting to attach this very roughly scrunched paper and just attach it very lightly with some tape. I'll come back and reinforce that. And then I'm doing the same on the other side. Be careful not to cover the little bits of, in my case, white string, the little loops near the top of the head. Now I've covered up where the eyes are, so I can work out where my eyes should go just by looking at it and deciding where I'd like to put an eye. Actually, one would be about there. And I'm going to then re-punch a hole all the way through. Be really careful of your fingers doing this. And then I'm going to enlarge that using a ballpoint pen. And the nice thing with this, it starts making a hollow for the eye. And now I'll do the same for the body. Next thing to do is to work out where the best place to attach the thin control strings to. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a bit of this thin puppet thread and just tie a loop. So I'm just making a loop and forming that into a little knot. So it's just a little lasso like that, and the same for the other end. And then I'm going to take a large head pin and really hang the puppet on the pin and then loop the loop over the pin. So that's just a nice easy way of attaching it, and that starts getting where the best position is. That's not a good place. It's so now I'm going to move that to another part of our string loop. That's better. Now we've actually got a head that will look upright and will drop. So that's the correct position. So just a little bit of water and give it a good mix. Now I'm going to take a slightly bigger brush and I'm going to paint the whole of the head in this glue. Take a piece of paper out and absolutely scrunch it into a ball. You can squeeze out the water and you can put the lid back on. Pop that on your plastic sheet and paint generously from the middle out. And then pick up an edge, flip it over, and do the same on the other side. And now you're ready to paper mâché. And I'm going to tear off a bit and apply it. If they're too large, you start getting folds in the paper. Really important to paper mâché right up to the little loop that you've left for the thread, but not to cover it. A really easy way is just to use elastic, a bit of round white or black or any colour, and I'm just tying the one bead on with a single knot and doing a second knot on top of that to fix it. And then I'm cutting that a little bit shorter, leaving a bit out. Then I'm going to cut it too long. I'm going to pop that through there, and that will then pull in. And the other eye, you start with getting the length right and then really pulling it out and tying that on so that the elastic is stretched as you're tying it. And you can test that out, and that's pulled that in very nicely. And I can now pull this out and tie a second knot. And then I'm going to trim that a bit shorter, and that end can be poked down the hole of the eye. And there you've got the eyes are on. So I'm going to cut a bit of puppet thread, about 60 centimeters. I'm going to take the feathers off for now to make it easier. And I'm going to thread this through the body loop. And I'm just doing 2 half hitches, so it's just round and through, that's one, and again round, doesn't matter which way you go, whichever way it likes to go, and that's a double knot, and that won't come undone, and cut it with about 1 centimeter extra. Now we want to attach that to the back of the control. That is the back there. So what I'm doing is I'm going to open up that little loop. I'm going to pop this through, and then I'm going to work out, without tying it, how long I want it. All depends where you want your puppet to work. I might want to work it on the table. I'm going to see whether I can actually get it standing when it's hooked up here. That's quite a nice height for me. And I'm going to do 2 half hitches. There's one. And there's another, and pull that tight. And then hang this up, ideally so the feet are just touching the ground, so it's stable. Now we can do the same with the head.